So for me, it was something of a shock to have to entertain the idea that nirvana perhaps wasn't the final answer. The perennial philosophy wasn't the final answer, but there was some value, unique value in the individual's life. So what I wanted to do, that's basically a very brief summary of the first part of my book. I also look at the role of the creative artist, creative mythology. For Campbell, there's two main elements to creative individual mythology. There's the idea that the modern artist is in some sense the new myth maker, that people don't collectively subscribe to Christianity as the one myth of Western culture anymore, and so there's been this what Campbell calls the disintegration of the Orthodox traditions. The Orthodox religious traditions have started to disintegrate, and that's ushered in a period of creative individualism. So within that, according to Campbell, it's the role of the artist. If the artist can get in touch with his or her own depths, they can give form to new myths. They can shape new myths. So that's one aspect of creative individual mythology. The other one, which Campbell is probably even better known for, is the idea that we can learn to read myths metaphorically and thereby gain access to their psychological import, rather than seeing myths literally. And I think probably millennia ago, the Greco-Roman era, people did actually believe that gods and goddesses inhabited Mount Olympus. I think that's very likely. So Campbell's arguing for an intrapsychic view of gods and goddesses, that they are not, of course, physical, really existent beings, but they are symbolically expressive of archetypes, the powers and principles of the psyche. So if we can read myths with that psychological lens, we can understand their value for our life today, and that, of course, is what Campbell really champions. So what I'm going to do now then is just move on to the second part and go through, give some examples of the different stages of the hero's journey and how they might be experienced personally and what they indicate in terms of psychological dynamics. So keep in mind then the three phases of Campbell's monomyth: separation, initiation, and return. Departure, the road of trials and transformation, and then incorporation, return phase. So it's a triphasic model. And within those three phases you get different stages, subsections, and I'm sure many of you know this already. So the call to adventure marks the beginning of the journey. We can think of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, when I think he gets attacked by sand people and is knocked unconscious, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi, comes to his rescue. So he meets his mentor at that moment, and then returns. It has a sense of danger, that his guardians, his aunt and uncle, are in danger, and rushes back to the farm where he lives, and he sees the farm in ruins. His guardians have been slain. That is a call to adventure. I mean, that is where life unequivocally ends one phase of your existence and just pushes you on a new path, and you've got no say in the matter. I mean, for Luke Skywalker, and I think for many of us, there's this often a yearning to do more with our lives. We feel called to, excuse me, some pretty carbonated water. We feel called to do something great with our life. We sense that within us, often from a young age. That the normal patterns of life can't accommodate what we want to do. So there's a sense of destiny, and in that instant, when Luke Skywalker's old life is ended, that is when destiny comes through with a firm hand. It's and just totally wipes away the past. So there's no choice. Luke Skywalker is thrust onto a transpersonal life destiny from that moment. Another example would be in Lord of the Rings. Frodo Baggins talking with Gandalf, and he learns about the Ring of Power, and he reluctantly has to accept this mission to take the Ring of Power away from the Shire. The Ring of Power, so much symbolism with that, but it's in Lord of the Rings, each time someone puts on the ring, and it has like a possessive effect that, and I think they do this very well in the film, that it just, the integrity of individual consciousness is compromised by this, the power rush that the ring gives. And that is, to a certain extent, what it feels like when you're in the grip of an instinct. If you're going through a transformative process, an instinct can just come along and grab you, and in quite an unconscious way, and then that instinct could have you for a couple of days, and then another instinct comes along and knocks you another way. And this is Jung's idea of being like a small vessel, being tossed around by the waves, where the waves of the ocean is the unconscious. So this is the danger with the Ring of Power. So Frodo, of course, accepts this mission that he doesn't want to do, but again, he's been yearning to kind of live like Bilbo, to have the adventures like Bilbo. He knows in his depth, somewhere in his depth, that he has a potential for this greater life. And then when the moment comes, often many of us want to live a spiritual life, want to have our full life adventure, but yet it's so daunting when we actually have to take those steps on our path. So that's another call to adventure. The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy getting dog Toto getting lost left outside, and she goes to find the dog and then gets caught up in the tornado and bangs her head. That is like a synchronistic, unexpected entrance into this whole magical world of the Land of Oz, which is like the journey through the unconscious. That's the suggestion. Some of you, I'm sure, must have seen Pan's Labyrinth. Came out a few years ago. Really good film. It's set in Franco's Spain and in the 1940s, just after the Second World War. And the main character is Ophelia, a young girl, and her mother is in a relationship with an officer in Franco's army. And they're going to start a new life with this officer. So the mother is pregnant, they're travelling along in a carriage, in a car, and then the mother feels nauseous, she's pregnant, and so the car comes to a halt. And Ophelia, the little girl, gets out of the car, is wandering around in the woods, and that's where she discovers this insect. This insect appears to her, and that is her call to adventure. The insect then leads her down into the Pan's Labyrinth, and that's the essence of the whole film. So again, it's this seemingly accidental development, the car stopping because the mother's sick, just at a specific moment of time, at a certain location, and that initiates the whole life adventure. And that's what it's like, I think. The unconscious arranges life situations for us that call us at a specific moment, whether it's a synchronicity or a dream or just the arrangement of events. That can be how the unconscious reaches out to us and draws us along our path. And I think these kind of examples suggest that rather well. So that's the call to adventure, and that's the happy conclusion when the individual is able to follow the call that they receive. But I think more often than not, there can be some kind of refusal. Campbell calls it the refusal of the call, where there's, for whatever reason, the individual is just not able to respond to his or her life adventure. They're just not able to give themselves to it. There's resistance, or something prevents that happening. So this intrigued me, because I think the whole idea of not wanting to live your life adventure, that's quite intriguing, because I think a lot of us experience that. We really want a full spiritual life. We want to say yes to life, embrace the adventure. But then we've got to pay the bills. We've got to look after the kids, or whatever it might be. There are always 10, 20 things that prevent us from often fully committed to our lives. So they're the real world reasons, but I think often those reasons they're the physical expression of fear. You know, fear really is the guardian of the threshold, and fear is bound up with the structure of the ego. The ego complex is, in some sense, like a psychological form of the self-preservation instinct. You know, that we want to preserve our sense of I, that we want to make sure that we're going to be okay in 2 days' time, in 2 weeks' time, in 2 years' time. It's a fear-based, no response to life that wants to accept the nice parts of life and protect us from the negative, from the painful aspects of life. And that is what the ego is, really. I mean, the ego is, to use Freud's term, is attuned to the pleasure principle. You know, we want to live happy, pleasurable lives, and then the painful part of life is pushed into the unconscious. It becomes what Jung calls the shadow. So when we have to turn to face the shadow, it's incredibly painful, because all the negative, painful aspects of life are there in the shadow. So I think that the refusal of the call reflects the psychological structure of the ego complex, that it's built around fear, and that this complex, this structure, has to be often systematically dismantled before we can say yes to our life adventure. You know, Campbell was the whole idea of following your bliss and having a yay-saying approach to life. This is the essence of Campbell's teaching. How do we develop that kind of affirmative response? I mean, because we're naturally going to hit on resistances, and really the individuation process, Jung's model of deep psychological transformation, that is to do with liberating libido, psychological energy that's trapped in complexes, and overcoming the resistance of the ego, so that we can move towards this state of psychological wholeness. Now, I think, you know, Campbell talks a lot about the wasteland scenario, and I think that the wasteland scenario is to do with the kind of existential alienation of the ego. When the ego is so far removed from the instincts and cut off from the greater psyche, life can become dry, barren. There's no excitement, there's no flow, there's no passion. And this, of course, is the wasteland, the idea that there's no life revivifying water. Everything is dry and barren, desert-like, and water is a symbol of the unconscious. So when the ego is cut off from the unconscious, there's no flow of life, there's no flow of water, of power, of instinct from the unconscious. So again, I think that is the existential plight that many individuals experience today. You know, meaninglessness, angst, dread, you know, sense of you know, just disease, or you know, the whole range of psychopathology really that afflicts the modern world. I think that reflects this condition whereby the ego has grown to a point of being separate, even alienated from the larger psyche. So the wasteland and the existential crisis and the philosophy of existentialism, these are all, I think, articulating the same kind of experience. And this is bound up with a no response to life. The ego is, in some sense, opposed to the flow, the natural flow of life. And so this journey, the hero's journey, is to do with overcoming the resistance of the ego, so that the life can flow again. The water can revivify the barren wasteland, and life can flourish. That is the aim. So it's a movement. It's a movement from a no response to life to a yes response to life.